Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we're taking a really strategic look at leadership success, especially in, well, the complex world we operate in now. We're going beyond just the technical skills, the basics, and diving into something perhaps more powerful, humility.
Yeah, it sounds simple, maybe even a bit soft,
Mm,
but the research we've looked at reframes it completely.
exactly. It's not just a personal virtue anymore. It's being positioned as a high-impact, measurable, strategic soft skill, something that actually drives team performance, engagement, innovation. The core idea we're digging into is that leadership humility isn't a soft option. It's the hard engine of performance.
Okay, first things first. We need to be crystal clear on what we mean by leadership humility, because it's definitely not about weakness. It's not self-deprecation or, having low self-esteem. If you're constantly putting yourself down, that's insecurity, not humility.
That's a really important distinction.
Yeah. In a leadership context, think of it as radical self-awareness in action. The sources we pulled break it down into three kind of core parts. First, knowing your strengths, but uh, without puffing them up, being accurate. Second, acknowledging your limits openly, without being afraid someone will judge you for it. And third, and this is key, genuinely valuing what others bring to the table, actively seeking it out, actually.
Right. So it's a confident awareness, knowing where your expertise stops and being okay admitting that. And what's fascinating is how that changes the whole dynamic, the power dynamic in a company. Our analysis really shows this mindset transforms a leader's formal authority into genuine influence.
It builds trust almost instantly. Because, look, it takes the pressure off everyone, starting at the top, the pressure to be perfect. When a leader is secure enough to actually show their learning, to ask, I don't know this, how should we approach it? Suddenly collaboration isn't just a nice to have, it becomes central to how things get done.
And that shift, moving from just giving orders to tapping into the group's intelligence,
Yeah,
that feels like what the future of work is all about. There was a quote in the material that really nailed it. When the leader becomes teachable, the whole system becomes intelligent.
exactly. The leader sets the tone for learning across the board.
Okay, let's unpack that. If humility is really strategic, we need to see the numbers. Where's the proof? Where does it actually hit the bottom line? This is where it gets really interesting for me because there's actual hard data connecting this, let's face it, soft skill to real results.
Oh, the proof is pretty compelling.
Yeah.
We looked at a major meta-analysis, covered over 53 studies, something like 16,500 professionals, huge sample.
Yeah.
And they basically treated humble leadership as an input, measuring the concrete ROI it produces. So for instance, trust ratings within teams, they saw a jump of 62%.
Wow. 62%. That's not a small tweak.
No,
That suggests a fundamentally different atmosphere in an organization. If trust jumps that much, think about the reduction in friction and misunderstandings. What about things like loyalty, dedication?
yep, that shows up too. The metric they used was effective commitment. It increased by 56%.
Okay, effective commitment. Can you break that down a bit? That 56% boost sounds impressive, but what does it feel like day to day in a business?
Sure. Effective commitment is basically that emotional connection an employee feels. It's the desire to stay with the company because they believe in it, not just for the salary. So a 56% increase means people are way more likely to give what we call discretionary effort.
Ah, the extra mile.
Exactly. The effort they could hold back, but they choose not to
Oh.
because they feel invested, they feel valued.
That makes total sense. They're not just engaged in a checklist kind of way. They're actually emotionally bought in. What other key metrics moved?
Well, two more big ones stand out. Employee engagement itself gets a 40% lift, which makes sense. It tracks with commitment.
Hmm.
And really crucial for growth, team creativity. That gets a 39% boost.
Almost 40% more creativity.
Yeah.
That's massive. And does it impact, just getting the job done, the basic tasks?
It does. Even direct task performance, just how well people execute their core responsibilities, improves by 33%. These aren't small numbers. It really paints humility as a strategic lever, not just, a nice personality trait.
Let's dig into the why behind those numbers, especially that 39% jump in innovation. How does a leader saying, I'm not sure, actually lead to more creativity?
It fundamentally changes the psychological safety on the team. But even more specifically, it boosts what psychologists call self-efficacy. If your team sees that the leader is genuinely curious, doesn't pretend to know everything, well, they feel much more empowered. Empowered to challenge things, to throw out half-baked ideas, to raise concerns about risks. That vulnerability modeled at the top, that's the trigger.
So it makes it okay for others to be vulnerable too.
Precisely. These open collaborative environments don't just magically appear. They're actively accelerated when leaders model that learning stance.
And presumably that openness helps with operational efficiency too.
Exactly. High trust, low ego. It drastically cuts down on internal conflict, on counterproductive behaviors, all the stuff that just drains energy.
Yeah.
Humility drives alignment. Teams pull together around goals much better because the focus is on the problem itself, not on, office politics or ego battles.
Less friction, fewer errors.
Saves a ton of time and resources.
Yeah. And something else we saw in the studies was how humility predicts talent development. It seems linked to things like effective mentoring, positive influence,
Right.
even how people progress into leadership roles themselves.
It don't make sense, doesn't it? If you're a leader willing to admit you don't have all the answers, you're naturally going to be better at creating space for others, space for them to step up, share their expertise. You become more of a coach, less of a commander,
Right.
and that builds what you could call sustainable leadership. Leaders like that maintain credibility over the long haul. Their influence comes from respect and continuous learning, not just the title on their door.
Okay, so the benefits are clear, huge ROI, but this leads to a critical point you raised.
Yes,
Hmm.
we can't just hope individuals are naturally humble. If we want those big gains, like that 62% trust lift, it needs to be systemic,
Yeah.
relying on individual character alone. It's not enough.
Nope.
It has to be modeled, reinforced, and actually built into the way the organization works.
That's the leap, isn't it? Moving from leaders should be humble to how do we design an organization for humility?
Hmm.
The sources actually break this down into 3 layers for scaling it, starting small, then moving outwards.
Mm-hmm.
The first layer is the individual level. This is all about self-assessment, internal work, things like genuine self-reflection, not just what did I do, but what were my motives? Practicing intentional feedback acceptance, maybe even journaling,
Yeah.
and simple daily things like consciously acknowledging 3 specific contributions from others before lunch. Micro practices.
And then you expand that to the team and interpersonal level.
Mm.
Now the focus shifts to shared knowledge, to collaboration systems.
Yeah.
So think about things like structured peer recognition programs or genuinely shared decision-making models.
What does genuinely shared look like there?
Well, maybe the final decision maker has to explicitly state what they learned from people who disagreed. It forces engagement with other views. Also practical stuff like active listening drills in team meetings.
And there was one technique mentioned that really stood out: reverse mentorship.
Ah, yes. The junior to senior skill exchange. It's brilliant because it actively models learning across the hierarchy.
Yeah.
Imagine, say, a senior exec being taught about a new social media platform by someone fresh out of college.
Right.
It sends a powerful message. Valuable insight comes from everywhere. It teaches that teachable stance to the whole organization.
I love that idea. But doesn't it need the senior person to be okay with being vulnerable first? How do you get past that initial ego hurdle, the fear of looking silly in front of someone junior?
That's a really fair question. And that's precisely why it needs to be systemic. You can't just throw people into it. You might start with less ego-sensitive topics like technology, as you said, but crucially, you need the third layer, organizational level support. The culture and the routines have to back this up. It means having transparent policies around feedback. Recognition systems that genuinely celebrate collaboration, not just the lone hero. It means structuring meetings, maybe dedicating time specifically to learning from mistakes, not just assigning blame. Humility has to be designed into the process.
So for leaders listening right now thinking, okay, I get it, but what can I do tomorrow? The research offered some concrete steps. First one was conducting a humility audit.
Yes. This isn't vague navel-gazing. It's a focused check on specific observable behaviors like, did I genuinely ask for help this week? Did I take physical notes when receiving feedback to show I was listening? Did I publicly share credit, naming specific people or their contributions? It forces you to measure the action, not just, feel good about the intention.
Then there's the language shift, analyzing how you talk.
Are you using control language? I decided. My team will, which reinforces hierarchy. Or are you shifting to collaboration language? We learned, how should we approach this? Which builds influence and shared ownership. That simple switch can change everything.
And finally, making it stick. Micro rituals.
Yeah, small daily or weekly habits, 1 to 10 minutes. Things that build momentum. Maybe start every planning meeting with a quick prompt like, what assumption did we hold last week that turned out to be wrong? Or using, say, a sand timer for a minute's pause before you respond to tough feedback, just to make sure you're responding with curiosity, not defensiveness.
So let's bring it all together. What's the main takeaway for you listening?
It seems pretty clear. Embedding humility systematically is what drives alignment, engagement, and innovation. When you prioritize this kind of self-awareness, when you genuinely value what others bring, people feel seen, they feel valued, they feel empowered, and that translates directly into